Hello, and welcome to Zhinjio's Addon tutorials. We're working with Pitbull 4, and this is Module 6, titled Positioning and Sizing. This module is going to focus on how to position various elements around the unit frame. That includes all the indicators, as well as texts, as well as some of the other more special class-specific indicators like the paladin dangle or shaman totems, combo points, and druid eclipse bars, and so forth and so on. As you can see, I've got a easy starting point here. Basic player unit frame, 3 bars, a health, power, and a blank space bar. No text, anything configured currently. I do have the background of the frame set to fairly bright red, so it's obvious. And let's start out by going into config mode here of solo. So we also have the target frame, and continue from there. So, first thing I want to talk about is what settings in here pertain to positioning. So to demonstrate that, let's take a look at a text first and enable that, and then take a look at which pieces here pertain to that. These 3 settings right here, attach to, location, and position, are the elements that determine where something is positioned in the unit frame. Attach to, this setting basically allows you to select what bar inside the unit frame this element is going to be attached to, and to that point, anything that the frame considers a bar is going to be a valid attach point. There's one special one, unit frame, which is not a bar, but is instead the entire unit frame. And we'll get into some of the differences there in a minute. And I mention anything that Pitbull considers a bar because we'll have some special settings here in a little bit that will make that a little more interesting. Okay, so we'll use the health bar. When we do have a bar targeted here, we have several positions or locations that this can be assigned to. Right, currently it's in the middle. You'll also have left and right, and of course outside left, which goes outside the bar to the left or outside the bar to the right. Now, this pertains to any bar that is considered a center bar. So what do I mean by that? If I go to the bars and I take a look at the health bar, its side is centered. So when I say a centered bar, that's what I'm talking about. I could take a bar, for example the power bar, and move it to the left. There. And now let's anchor something to it. Why don't we go to PvP icon, for example, and enable that. I'm going to attach it to the power bar. It is already. But now when I look at the locations that are available, you'll notice they include top and bottom instead of left and right. This is because of the new orientation of the bar. So that's why that's present. You'll also notice a little bug here. It says outside left. It really means outside top. So, little bug there, no big deal. Okay, getting back to some other icons, I wanted to demonstrate one other quick point here. Let's go to combat icon. We'll put that also on the health bar, and we'll put it also in the middle. Now the interesting thing here is that both of these elements here, the text of the name and the combat icon, are both occupying the same place. That's where this position drop down comes into play. So right now the combat icon is on the left, the name text is on the right, but I can reverse those like that. And I can swap them back and forth as I see fit. If I have a third icon there, let's go with the leader icon, for example. Also on the health bar, we'll move him to the middle. Now they're all 3 there. And again, I can swap those positions however I like. So that's what that position element is for. It only applies when you have more than one element attached to and located in the exact same place. So that's how that works. All right, finally let's get to the attached to unit frame and see how that behaves. Let's go to quest icon, enable that. It's attached to the unit frame, and it's currently attached, as you can see here, to the inside bottom left. Now this has many more options as far as its position is concerned. There's three basic areas: the edge, which kind of looks like that, right? It's right on the edge. Inside, which we just looked at, let's do bottom left again, like so. Or outside. So for example, outside left would be outside the unit frame. And you can really, you've got quite a bit of flexibility there. So I'll move that to inside bottom left. Let's do the roll icon, also attached to the unit frame. You'll notice outside left bottom. There is a difference between, by the way, left bottom here and below left, which is there. So whatever word is first in this becomes the main position. So for example, below left is below left, and left bottom is left bottom. And then finally, let's do one more master looter. I'll put him on the edge on the top left, so you can see that. Very good. Okay, so that brings up one final topic with positioning, which is something called positioning as bar. So the best example of that is probably portrait. Let's take a look at that. And I'm going to set it to position as bar. Now you'll notice that instead of being attached to an element here, like the unit frame or another bar, it instead begins to act like a bar. So it's actually positioned where the power bar was just a moment ago. You'll also notice that it's quite a bit bigger, but that's because the portrait must be square. It also has a few extra settings associated with it. Full body, which has that effect, as you can see. You can make the style of it change. 3D is where the portrait is moving. 2D is not moving. And class is just a class icon. And then fallback style. Fallback style you can see demonstrated here on my target frame. I don't actually have a target selected right now, so it basically is taking the icon as if the unit I had selected is out of range. If I actually select myself, for example, with F1, you can see it shows the 3D icon. However, if I don't have anything selected, it basically assumes that the unit is out of range, and that's what fallback style says. So do I want the 3D question mark like this? Do I want to hide it completely, like so? Do I want a 2D representation, which is to say nothing, class icon, or just be blank? So normally I just leave it at the question mark. And finally, background color. Background color has one very slight tiny bug with it, which I'll point out here in just a second. The background color, as you can see, is just is black with about half opacity. So you can see it's just kind of darkening the red background. As I get darker here, you can see it goes towards black. The one little bug here is if I actually go to the top of this slider, poof, it's gone. So it actually has a slight bug there. At the top of the slider, it should be completely black. It's not. It just kind of disappears. So let's leave that about there. And then finally, the side setting. You can actually have this positioned in the center as well, which is kind of an interesting look. When you do have it positioned as center, it does acquire a height setting, just like any other bar. And you can see how that behaves, right? And I'm going to move it to the right for the rest of this demonstration. So the interesting part about this is, since we positioned it as a bar, as I mentioned earlier, anything that Pitbull considers a bar is a valid target for anchoring or attaching other indicators to. So let's take a look at that. How about the combat icon? We currently have it over here. But now if I look at the attach to drop down, you'll now see portrait here. So I can actually, since it's now considered a bar, I can anchor the combat icon to the portrait. Now the interesting thing about the portrait is because it's square, it actually has more options for positioning. Any of the cardinal directions here, all the outside ones plus the middle, are valid targets. So you have a few more options here. Why don't we move this to, let's say, top right. And How about master leader icon? We'll move him around in here as well. Portrait. We can put him, let's say, bottom left, so you can see him over here, and so on. So you have plenty of options. Again, if you have two things occupying the same space, position once again becomes an interesting setting. Otherwise, it does not. Okay, finally, let's move the master leader icon back to the health bar, and I'll move him to outside left. Now, there's one final thing I want to demonstrate with this. I'm going to turn that off and go to the raid target icon, enable that. And I have it positioned as a bar, as you can see here. This one also acquires that sort of square element. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the portrait and anchor it to the raid target icon. And let's do, I don't know, it doesn't really matter here, bottom right. So it's positioned, you can see, behind the raid target icon. I'm going to go out of solo mode to demonstrate this. Now you'll notice that the portrait is visible even though the raid target icon is not. So this is one sort of nuance of the way that that anchoring system works. If the element that you're anchoring something to is not visible, and the thing you're anchoring is something that is always visible, it will still remain visible. It will just be in the position that the raid target icon would occupy if it were actually present. So obviously if I set myself a raid target icon, now it has a place to anchor it to, and that's where it's going to be. But if I clear that again, the portrait is in fact still visible. So that doesn't go away. Let's take a look at one final thing here. I'm going to turn that off. Let's move the portrait back to the right. Good. Go back to config mode. All right. Final thing is spacing. That's in the general tab of the indicators. Layer 2 tab there. We have a couple things here. First is spacing between adjacent elements. So this is going to apply here, where we have two elements that are occupying the same place. If I increase that, you'll see those things move away from each other. Right, so you have some flexibility with that. You also have flexibility with size. This applies to anything that is not anchored as a bar. See all of them grow. That moves 5 at a time, but of course you can set it to whatever value you want here if you so desire. But if you just drag it, it'll move 5 at a time. Now you have inside horizontal padding, which is for any icon that's placed inside of a bar. Do I have one of those? Yeah, right here. This one will work. That's the padding from the edge of that element. Right there. You have outside margin. So we have one thing anchored to the outside of the health bar here. That'll move this one away from the edge of the bar. And then finally, for things that are mounted to the unit frame, you have inside horizontal padding. So watch the quest icon here. That's the horizontal padding. There's the inside vertical padding. And then outside margin, so that will apply to the roll icon. You can see how that adjusts. So quite a lot of flexibility as far as how those elements are spaced between each other and then around all of the various elements, padding-wise. So that's all I really wanted to show you about positioning and sizing. At this point, you should be pretty comfortable moving the bars around, attaching all the various indicators to them, and positioning them correctly inside or, in fact, even outside the frame. I hope you stick around for more modules, and thanks again for listening.